The sky above the burned-out colony world of Zenthus 4 churned with gray ash and static charge clouds. The remains of twisted metal structures jutted from the soil, like bones, evidence of the Federation's failed push against the Silkar Dominion. In the shadow of one such ruin, half buried beneath collapsed plating, lay a man, bloodied, breathing, and forgotten. Callum Riker exhaled a sharp breath through clenched teeth, blinking the grit from his only functional eye. His visor was cracked, the HUD flickering, cycling endlessly through diagnostics that read the same. Left arm, compromised. Ammo, low. Squad, offline. The pain was secondary now, dulled by adrenaline and anger. He had lain there for hours, unmoving, watching the ebb and flow of battle play out through a fractured glass of his helmet like some twisted theater. The last he heard from command had been a garbled transmission. Extraction point shift, fallback, ignore the human, then silence, then abandonment. He wasn't surprised. The Federation's alliance with Earth was built more on utility than respect. Humans were quick to adapt, inventive, tough, useful foot soldiers and specialists, but not equals, not in the eyes of the Arkan strategist or the Varnak command chain, and certainly not a Commander Trau, whose voice had laced every briefing with barely concealed contempt for Earth's feral tacticians. Callum had earned his reputation in the crater fields of Drayton Prime and the icy ridges of Talos 7, where he'd pulled off shots in hurricane-force winds and zero-G drift. He was a sniper in the truest sense, calm, calculating, deadly. Yet now, with plasma burns striping his flank and a leg pinned under twisted support beams, all his accolades counted for nothing. A static pop crackled in his comms, just enough to give him a flicker of situational awareness. Through his damaged scope, he watched Federation forces march obliviously across the valley below, a regiment of alien soldiers shimmering with energy shields and precision-drilled movements. Their march was bold, even arrogant, ignoring the rise of black-veined ridges to the east. That was a mistake. Callum adjusted his position slightly, pain flaring through his side. A Silkar forward unit crept along those ridges, cloaked beneath organic mesh plating. Their movements were subtle, but he knew what he was seeing. A flanking maneuver. The Federation troops were walking into an ambush, and none of their high command bastards would realize it until it was too late. He considered activating his emergency beacon, but he already knew it had been locked out. Non-essential human asset. They'd labeled him in the last operation log. Disposable. Fine. He reached for his rifle. Seraph 9, custom tuned with magnetic stabilizers and a carbon ceramic barrel. The moment his fingers wrapped around the grip, something in his chest settled. He was a broken man in a dying world, but with this weapon in his hand, he wasn't powerless. Not yet. A targeting ping lit up on the edge of his HUD. Enemy commander. Tall, insectoid, armor like obsidian glass veined with crimson light. The Silkar field general. One shot would break the chain of command. Two would cripple their shield generator. Three could collapse the entire ambush. He had 3 rounds left. He loaded the first with meticulous care, muttering under his breath. One breath, one trigger pull. The scope's lens aligned with the target, wind compensation spinning through the analog dials. He never trusted the auto-adjust. His breathing slowed. The world shrank. The noise faded. Nothing existed except the crosshairs, the wind, the slight twitch of the Silkar leader's movement. He fired. The recoil was slight, muted by the barrel dampeners. A beat later, the commander's head jerked sideways in a burst of violet ichor. The creature crumpled silently. No time to admire it. He loaded the second round. A massive shimmer began to pulse in the rear of the enemy formation, their mobile shield emitter. He aimed for its core, hidden beneath layers of reactor plating. The shot tore through them, puncturing the reactor node in a sizzling flash of collapsing energy. Shields across the field fizzled out. The third round went in without hesitation. He found the command crawler, a monstrous vehicle bristling with antennae and artillery. His scope adjusted slightly to track a reflective panel on its flank. He fired. The round ricocheted off the polished panel, banked hard, and struck the crawler's secondary core. A split second later, the vehicle erupted in a blue-white ball of searing light. 3 seconds. 3 shots. 3 kills. The enemy line faltered. The precision of the Silcar dissolved into confusion. Federation soldiers hesitated, watching the enemy formation unravel without warning. Murmurs filled the comms. Callum caught snippets through his fractured link. Did anyone authorize artillery? No signal. What the hell was that? I think it came from the ruins. He slumped back against the broken plating, letting out a breath that rattled in his chest. His vision swam, but he stayed conscious, if barely. Somewhere below, the tide of battle was changing because of him, because they had left behind a sniper they assumed had already died. They had ignored Earth's wounded weapon. But Earth didn't build fragile things. In the distance, the enemy withdrew, and on the edge of unconsciousness, Callum Riker smiled. The air was still, eerily so, as if the world itself were holding its breath after the fury of the last 3 seconds. Smoke drifted upward from the gutted remains of the Silcar command crawler, casting a long, distorted shadow across the battlefield. The silence didn't last. Screams, shrieks, and chittering orders broke the quiet as the enemy ranks dissolved into chaos. In the ruins above, Callum Riker remained motionless, rifle balanced across his lap, the smoking barrel cooling in the wind. He listened, not just to sound, but to movement, to tension, to the shape of panic. The Silcar were floundering. Their coordination had vanished with the death of their commander. What moments earlier had been a meticulous assault had become disjointed and reactive. They didn't know where the shots had come from, and that ignorance bred fear. Callum forced himself to sit up straighter, wincing as pain lanced through his ribs. His hands moved with automatic precision, ejecting the spent magazine and checking the final reserve. 1 round. 1 clean brass casing, kissed by oil and copper light. He didn't load it. Not yet. The field below had changed, but it hadn't ended. Across the valley, the Federation's line hesitated. He could see them. The Arkan stormtroopers with their crystalline armor, the Varnak heavy infantry shifting in their powered exosuits. For all their technological prowess, they hadn't fired a shot since the crawler exploded. Their formations wavered, uncertain whether to advance or pull back. Cowards with calculators for instincts. He toggled the zoom on his cracked scope, panning across the disarray. His HUD kept blinking, unauthorized fire detected, in crimson text, but he ignored it. His breathing was shallower now, but his mind remained sharp. Somewhere in the confusion, he spotted a signal flare arcing into the sky, a Silcar distress beacon. Reinforcements. That was their backup plan. The Silcar weren't retreating to regroup. They were retreating to bait. He could see it, as clear as if it had been painted on a map. The entire front had been a ruse. The real offensive would come from a ravine east of the crawler wreckage, a narrow defile where a secondary unit was already slithering into position. If they breached the Federation's left flank, the entire platoon would be encircled and crushed. And still, no one saw it. Callum adjusted the dial on his scope, slowing his breath. He wasn't supposed to be alive. He wasn't supposed to still be fighting. And yet, he was the only one seeing clearly through the fog of arrogance. He activated a channel override, tapping into the broad-spectrum broadcast. The comm snapped with static before a voice cut through. This is Corporal Callum Riker, active sniper designation Echo 7-1. Confirmed Silcar ambush unit approaching from the East Ravine. Recommend immediate repositioning of artillery assets. There was a beat of silence, then the inevitable reply, Corporal Riker? The voice was clipped mechanical. Arkan, you were marked Kiad 0400 hours. Identity cannot be verified. Callum cut the transmission. He didn't need verification. He needed results. He slid the last round into the chamber. It clicked with a clean, lethal finality. The weapon felt heavier now, not from weight, but from consequence. He adjusted the sight again, tracking the lead Silcar advance officer in the ravine, a tall figure cloaked in adaptive camouflage, directing units into pincer formation. The creature moved with subtle arrogance, unaware of the eyes fixed on it from hundreds of meters away. Callum aligned the shot. A long inhale, a pause, a soft exhale. The rifle cracked, echoing like thunder through the ruins. The Silcar officer's torso exploded inward, and its body dropped like a puppet with strings severed. Panic followed instantly. Soldiers scattering. Orders shouted and contradicted. The formation splintered before it even had the chance to strike. Now, finally, the Federation command responded. Explosions rippled across the ravine as artillery batteries roared to life, targeting the coordinates Callum had so helpfully illuminated. The Federation forces began to advance, capitalizing on the disruption. Alien commanders barked orders, unsure who would trigger the turn of tide, but unwilling to let the opportunity pass. Callum slumped back, the rifle falling from his grip with a dull clatter. His arm was numb, his side soaked in half-dried blood. He was out of ammo, out of energy, and out of time. A low-pitched hum rose in the distance, the sound of a dropship, fast and sleek, descending through the haze. He didn't flinch. If it was enemy, so be it. If it was friend, it was far too late to matter. His calm crackled again, this time with a different voice, calm, crisp, and unmistakably human. Sniper Echo 7-1, this is a Daggerfall. We've got eyes on your position. Hold tight. Med evac en route. He didn't answer. He couldn't. But a grin touched the corner of his mouth, small and weary. As the battlefield stabilized below, whispers began to spread through the ranks. Soldiers murmured of a ghost on a hill, a lone rifleman who had turned to war with 3 shots and a dying will. None had seen him clearly, but the results were undeniable. A single human sniper, left for dead, and yet, somehow, still fighting. Still deadly. Still a reminder that Earth soldiers were not made of the same material as the rest. Callum Riker let his eyes close, the warmth of the setting sun bleeding through the cloud cover. He didn't know if he would wake up again, but the field was quiet now. His part, for the moment, was done, and somewhere beyond the smoke, the war was just beginning to change. The medical bay aboard the Daggerfall smelled of antiseptic and scorched metal. The ship's engines throbbed beneath the floor panels, a rhythmic pulse that seemed to echo in Callum Riker's skull. He drifted between lucidity and darkness, tethered to consciousness by the quiet hum of machines and the occasional voice murmuring medical data in tones too calm to trust. When he finally surfaced, it was like breaking through ice. Light stabbed at his eyes. His ribs screamed with every breath. A field bandage, tight and clinical, wrapped his torso, and a dozen sensinodes crawled across his skin. One of the nurses noticed the flicker of movement and leaned closer, speaking softly. "Easy, Corporal. You're safe." Safe. The word didn't register at first. Safety was a foreign concept, a luxury. It had no meaning for someone whose existence had been classified as a rounding error. He didn't respond. He scanned the room instead, instinct sharper than his muscles. The medbay was sterile, windowless, and guarded. 2 Varnak security officers stood near the door, armor polished, weapons powered down but ready. Not standard procedure for a wounded sniper. He wasn't just a patient. He was a subject of interest. The door hissed open, and an Arkan officer entered, tall, silver-skinned, with smooth facial plates that reflected the overhead lights. Commander Trow. His presence chilled the air like logic made flesh. He walked with precision, hands clasped behind his back, his gaze unreadable. "You survived," Trow said, his tone flat, as if the outcome were an inconvenience. Callum's voice was hoarse, rough from disuse. I noticed the retrieval was reluctant. Trow regarded him in silence for a long moment before speaking again. "Your actions on Zenthas 4 disrupted an organized Silkar offensive and resulted in the preservation of 2 full regiments of Federation troops. Intelligence analysis confirms the elimination of 3 high-value enemy assets in a 6-second window. This has force reassessment. Of what? My kill count. Of human battlefield utility." Callum laughed, but it came out as a cough. He winced, then fixed Trow with a tired stare. "So I've upgraded from expendable to marginally useful?" "Your tone is emotional. It's the part where you left me to die. Hard to stay neutral after that." Trow blinked slowly. It was the Arkan version of discomfort. "You were presumed deceased after a comms blackout and biometric flatline. Protocol required prioritizing active units." Callum didn't answer. He'd heard excuses before. Tactful ones, cowardly ones, bureaucratic ones. This was just another flavor. Another silence fell. broken only when Tval stepped forward and placed a data slate on the table. The Federation High Council has initiated a formal inquiry into the event. Your testimony will be requested. Until then, you are to remain on board the Daggerfall for recovery and debriefing. Callum glanced at the slate, but didn't reach for it. And if I decline? Tval tilted his head. Puzzled, you performed a feat that has begun to circulate among command as statistically improbable. You are now a variable. Refusing cooperation would be unwise. The door hissed again as the commander left without waiting for a response. Callum stared at the ceiling. A variable. That was what he was now. Not a man, not a soldier, just an anomaly the system couldn't explain. Later, a human officer visited. Lieutenant Sarah Mallon, someone he remembered from a previous campaign on Telos 7. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. They're rewriting protocols, she said, pulling up a chair beside his bed. They can't admit they left you behind, but they also can't ignore what you did. So now they're spinning it. Let me guess, Callum murmured. Lone sniper heroics. Great sacrifice. Glorious victory. Close, she replied. They're calling it unsanctioned precision engagement by surviving operative. Still trying to decide if that's commendable or insubordinate. He smirked. Depends on how much paperwork it generates. She chuckled, but her smile faded quickly. Some of the brass are scared, Callum. Not of you specifically, of what it means. You proved something they didn't want to be true. That their systems aren't perfect? That humans don't need to be managed to be effective. That stuck with him. It echoed even after she left. Sleep came in brief, jagged stretches. In those moments of half-awareness, he saw flashes. Enemy faces exploding through scopes, the hot snap of recoil, the silence that followed each kill. He dreamed of Earth, too, of the sniper academy buried deep in the Appalachians, where storms were part of the curriculum and wind was a language of death. He remembered crawling through mud with a broken arm, lining up a shot that no AI predicted would succeed. They had called it instinct. He had called it necessity. The Federation called it lucky. He was beginning to realize it was neither. A week passed. The medbay grew colder as his strength returned. Officers came and went, most asking questions they already knew the answers to. He offered minimal replies. There was nothing to say that a report couldn't cover better. Then one morning, just before dawn cycle, a report came in from front. A Silcar counteroffensive on the other side of the sector. Heavy casualties, tactical breakdowns, enemy adapting, and a single phrase buried in the after-action logs, sniper-class assets recommended for future deployments. It was a small shift, but Callum saw what it meant. They were watching now. The Federation, the Silcar, the galaxy itself. And for the first time in years, Earth wasn't an afterthought. He sat up slowly, staring at his reflection in the dark glass of the medbay wall. The face was gaunt, pale, marked with fading bruises and healing cuts. But the eyes, those remained sharp. This wasn't the end. It was only the first shot. The war had changed. Not through treaties or declarations, but in whispers, in the quiet recalibration of mission parameters, in the subtle way officers now avoided speaking too directly when his name came up. Something had shifted after Zenthas 4. The Federation's tone, once cool and dismissive toward Earthborn soldiers, had grown uncertain, no longer derisive, yet not quite respectful. Callum Riker had become a question the command structure didn't know how to answer. He stood alone now on the Daggerfall's primary hangar deck, a solitary figure dwarfed by rows of drop shuttles and towering supply crates. His new rifle rested against his back, longer than standard Federation issue, matte black, earth-forged, the barrel coated in an anti-glare compound that made it vanish against darkness. A gift from no one. He'd made the modifications himself. Lieutenant Sarah Mallon stepped across the deck toward him, data slate in hand. She didn't salute. Formality had become redundant between them. They've got a target, she said without preamble. Unlisted system. Pre-collapse mining colony retrofitted into something else. Blackout zones on the scans. No outgoing transmissions for weeks. Silcar? Callum asked, eyes on the slate. She nodded. We think it's a command relay hub. Forward intelligence believes they're coordinating strike fleets through it. You take it out, they stall. He skimmed the data. No satellite support. No orbital relay. No exfil guarantee. Solo insertion? He asked, though the question was rhetorical. They know teams slow you down. He said nothing. The Federation wasn't interested in squads or camaraderie anymore. They wanted scalpel strikes. Quiet victories. Surgical ghosts. Malin glanced over her shoulder, then leaned in slightly. They're scared of you, Callum. But they're scared of what happens if they don't use you even more. He gave a dry, humorless smile. They'll sleep better if I disappear on this run. She didn't argue. Just come back. That's all I ask. He met her gaze, and for a moment the cold calculus of war flickered, displaced by something older, something almost human. Then he turned, heading toward the open drop shuttle. The descent was rough, even by drop capsule standards. The planet below had no official name, only a mining registry number buried in obsolete Earth databases. Its surface was barren, ashen, covered in sulfur dunes and jagged basalt formations. No breathable atmosphere. No sunlight, just electrical storms flickering across the churning gray sky, like distant artillery flashes. Callum hit ground hard. His exosuit compensated, dispersing the shock through reinforced joints. He rolled, came up on one knee and froze, listening. Nothing but static in his helmet's audio feed. The silence was not reassuring. He moved low, rifle raised, crossing the broken terrain, like a whisper. 3 kilometers out, he spotted a facility nestled in a crater. Half buried, obsidian black, shaped like a submerged monolith. No lights, no surface vehicles. But infrared revealed movement, steady patrol patterns, too precise for organic randomness. He settled behind a ridge and waited. Hours passed. He studied the patrols, marked the sensor sweeps, mapped entry vectors. When a dust storm blew in from the east, he made his move. Using the storm for cover, he scaled the crater edge and reached the perimeter wall. A narrow maintenance conduit protruded from the rock, unguarded, corroded, barely intact. Perfect. He slipped inside, crawling through a shaft barely wider than his shoulders. The metal was cold against his suit. Claustrophobic. He moved slowly, methodically, until the tunnel widened into an interior vent system. Dim emergency lights pulsed along the walls. No cameras. No alarms. Yet, inside the core facility, the architecture changed. Gone was the crude mining layout. This was military. Angular corridors. Alloyed floors. Black panels etched with glowing runes. The Silcar didn't just occupy this place. They had rebuilt it. He passed labs with frozen experiments. Communication centers humming with encrypted chatter. Then he reached it, a central chamber, spherical, humming with energy. Dozens of uplink towers lined the walls, feeding into a massive data pillar. At its base stood a single figure, clad in silver armor, motionless. An overseer, the Silcar equivalent of a war tactician. He raised his rifle, but before he could fire, he noticed a gesture, deliberate, slow, almost ceremonial. The overseer touched the data pillar and stepped back. It knew. Callum froze. Not out of fear, but calculation. Something about the setup, so exposed, so pristine, felt wrong. He glanced at the uplinks again and noticed the frequency emitters pulsing, not towards Silcar space, but out into the unknown, beyond the map systems. This wasn't just command. It was a relay to something else. And now, they knew he was here. The decision was instinctual. He dropped his rifle, reached into his pack, and armed the pulse breaker. A high-frequency EMP bomb designed to fry uplinks without damaging power cores. It needed 60 seconds. Red lights flared. Doors slammed. The base came alive. Callum dropped the charge and ran, sprinting back the way he came, ducking between beams of plasma fire that lit up the hallway like hell's own fireworks. Drones shrieked past him. One clipped his shoulder. He stumbled but kept moving. His heart pounded in his ears, not with panic but with clarity. 30 seconds. He reached the main corridor, shot the door control panel, bolted down the vent. 15 seconds. He burst out of the conduit into the crater just as the pulse breaker detonated. A soundless, invisible wave rolled through the mountain. Lights blinked out. Systems died. The entire relay complex went dark. Then the real explosion came. His backup charge planted hours earlier. The ground convulsed, vomiting dust and flame as the relay vanished into a pit of smoke and ruin. Callum hit the dirt, coughing, lungs burning even to the filter mask. He rolled onto his back and stared at the sky. Above, the clouds parted for a moment, revealing stars. Cold, distant, unfeeling. But somewhere out there, a Silcar fleet was now blind, and a war had tilted. He sat up slowly, exhausted but alert. No evac would come. No medal. But he'd done it. One man, one rifle, one decision. And once again, humanity had proven it didn't need to be counted among the many to matter. The darkness returned, but this time he didn't flinch. He was already gone.